My father didn't even wait for the dirt in my grandfather's grave to settle before he spat his venom at me. "You won't get a single cent," he sneered, his hand gripping my shoulder as if hound me, too. "Your brother will inherit after me. You're nothing." I didn't answer, not then. I just stared at him, his smug smile, the champagne glass still in his other hand, the clinking sound of celebration while the scent of fresh earth and lies clung to the air. My grandfather's body was still warm in memory, but my father was already drunk on power. And that was the moment my mother appeared. Quiet, steady, her presence slicing through the noise. She slipped an envelope into my hand, leaned close and whispered, "It's time to tell them who you really are." That whisper carried the weight of years. I used to think my father's shadow was impossible to escape. He was the kind of man people listened to even when he said nothing. His silence was dominance. His words were law, and I was the disappointment he never forgave himself for creating. My brother, his favorite, wore his approval like a crown, groomed for success, adored, entitled. I was the forgotten son, the own whose questions were ignored, whose victories were downplayed, whose existence was merely tolerated. And yet it was my grandfather who saw me. He taught me patience, strategy, restraint. He never said the words, but I could see it in his eyes. He trusted me with something my father never could: vision. So when my grandfather died and no will surfaced, I knew it wasn't an accident. My father had buried more than a man that week. He had buried a truth. The signs were small at first. Documents missing from my grandfather's study. A lawyer who suddenly stopped taking my calls. My father's eyes gleaming with too much certainty when he spoke of inheritance. And then my mother's sudden reappearance. The woman my father had discarded years ago as if she were a mistake he wanted to erase. She placed the envelope on my desk the night after the funeral. Inside were photographs, signatures, and one undeniable fact. I was not who I thought I was. The man he called father had known for years. My brother and I did not share the same blood. I wasn't his son. I was my grandfather's chosen heir. My existence had been kept quiet, hidden behind forged papers and manipulated records. The betrayal wasn't just that my father dismissed me. It was that he had erased me. I didn't confront him. Note immediately. Rage is wasted on noise. I chose silence, calculation, the very lessons my grandfather had drilled into him in the garden when I was still a boy, trimming roses while he spoke of patience being the weapon most men fear. Step by step I began. The lawyer who had suddenly vanished, I found him. He wasn't missing, just bought. Money speaks loudly, but fear speaks louder. When I showed him what I had in that envelope, his face turned to ash. I cracked open the vault my father had tried to seal. My father's estate, the land, the accounts, half of it was never his to claim. My grandfather had prepared papers years ago, ensuring that when the truth came out, no judge could deny it. The real heir was me. Still, I didn't rush. Timing mattered. I wanted my father to taste his empire fully, to believe the throne was his before it pulled the chair from under him. The night came during a family gathering. The house was lit like a cathedral, chandeliers throwing gold across polished floors. My father sat at the head of the table, my brother on his right, smug and glowing with the certainty of power passed down. I waited until glasses were raised. My father began his toast, the words legacy and bloodline dripping from his tongue like poisoned honey. That's when I stood. I slid the envelope across the table toward him. "Before you finish that toast," I said evenly, "you should read this." His smile faltered. He opened it. Page by page, I watched color drain from his face. My brother leaned in, confusion shifting to disbelief. My mother's gaze never left him. "You see," I said, my voice calm, deliberate. "You were right. Your son will inherit, just not the one you chose." The silence was sharp enough to cut. My father's hands trembled. My brother whispered, No, this isn't real." But it was. Every signature, every seal, every hidden truth my father had buried, it was all there, undeniable. The fallout was immediate. The board members who once bowed to him turned their eyes to me. The lawyer, now back in my corner, confirmed every detail. Within weeks, the estate was legally transferred. My father fought. Of course he did. Courtrooms, threats, desperate phone calls. But the louder he screamed, the smaller he became. My brother, stripped of his future, blamed him. Their bond shattered under the weight of betrayal. And my mother, silent all those years, stood tall for the first time. She had kept the truth safe until I was ready. I didn't take everything from him. That would